Varath Dama had been built for permanence. This was visible in everything: the scale of the government buildings, the depth of the stone they were built from, the proportions of the corridors that communicated authority not through ornament, but through the simple, unambiguous weight of things that had been here for a very long time and expected to remain. The Keldrani sovereign authority governed this world, and the 14 systems attached to it with the specific quality of a civilization that had been governing for long enough to have stopped needing to announce it. Power here was not performed. It was ambient. It was in the stone. Soren Kal had been on Varath Dama for 4 months and had developed the specific relationship with it that deep diplomatic postings produced. Not familiarity exactly, but the beginning of fluency. The ability to read the place's grammar rather than just its vocabulary. He understood the palace's rhythms, when the corridors were busy with the institutional traffic of a working government, and when they held the specific quality of late evening, quiet that official buildings took on when the official day was done. He understood the negotiation session's rhythms, the advance and withdrawal, the positions stated and restated, the slow accumulation of shared language that was the actual work of what he did. He understood, or thought he understood, the rhythms of the people he was negotiating with. He was less certain about Rael. Sovereign Advisor Rael was the Keldrani authority's lead negotiator, not the most senior figure in the formal hierarchy, but the person around whom the Keldrani position organized itself, the one whose thinking shaped the sessions in the way that some people shape rooms simply by being in them. She was, by Keldrani reckoning, perhaps 45, with the long tapered ears of her people held in the precise, controlled positions of someone who had learned to manage her involuntary communications as thoroughly as her voluntary ones. Her intelligence was evident in everything she did, not the showy intelligence of someone who wanted you to know they were intelligent, but the functional kind, the kind that was simply the medium through which she operated. 4 months of sessions had given Soren a professional assessment of her that was thorough, and he was increasingly aware, incomplete. He knew how she argued. He knew the architecture of her positions, the patterns of her concessions, the specific qualities of her silences. He did not know what she thought about what she was doing, or what the work cost her, or what she wanted underneath the official position. The official sessions did not produce that kind of knowledge, which was usually fine. Usually the official knowledge was sufficient. He had the persistent sense, with Rael, that it was not sufficient. The note arrived at the end of the 4th month's 3rd week, delivered by a young aide who knocked on his quarters door at an hour that was late without being alarming, and presented the folded paper with the professional neutrality of someone who had been given specific instructions about manner of delivery, and was following them precisely. Soren took the note. The aide departed without waiting for a response, which was itself a kind of information. He unfolded it. The note was brief. A location, a room number in the palace's eastern residential wing, a section he knew as personal rather than official, not a meeting room or a formal space, but the part of the palace where people who worked there actually lived. A time, the 4th hour of the evening cycle, which was late. No signature. He read it twice. He thought about it for a moment. He was a person who assessed situations carefully, and he assessed this one. The note could be from several people, but the specific quality of its brevity and the specific choice of an insignificant private chamber narrowed the list considerably. The late hour and the unsigned nature of it narrowed it further. He arrived at a working theory. He went. The eastern residential wing was quiet at the 4th hour, the corridor holding the settled quality of a space where people were either asleep or occupied in private in the specific way of late evenings. The room number on the note was at the corridor's end, a door like the others, unremarkable. He knocked. There was a moment of silence. Then the door opened from the inside, not swiftly, not dramatically, but with the deliberate quality of a mechanism being operated by someone who had decided that this was the right moment and was acting accordingly. The threshold was empty. He could not see who had opened it. He entered. The room was a private chamber, personal, residential, containing the specific details of a space that was actually inhabited. Books arranged on shelves with the idiosyncratic logic of someone's actual reading rather than a library's order. A work surface with documents that were mid-process rather than archived. The general quality of a room that existed for its occupant rather than for any audience. A single lamp provided warm light. The viewport showed Varath Damaz night, the government district's illuminated geometry against the dark. Rael was standing at the room's center. She was not in formal attire. She was in the working clothes of someone's private evening. Not casual exactly, not informal in any way that diminished her, but simply the clothes of a person in their own space rather than in a professional one. Her long ears were at an angle he had not seen in any of the sessions. Not the formal controlled positions of official contexts, but something more natural, the angle of someone who is where they actually are rather than where they are required to be. She looked at him with the composed confidence of someone who had arranged a situation and was at ease in the arrangement. Behind him, he heard the door close. Then, with the specific sound of a mechanism engaging, the lock. He turned briefly to confirm what he had heard. Then he turned back. She was watching him with the quality of someone who had expected exactly this sequence of reactions and found it accurate. "Tonight," she said, with the confidence of someone stating something they have considered carefully and mean precisely, "you belong to me." This was not passivity. It was the specific trained stillness of someone who has learned, across 12 years of high-stakes rooms, that the most useful thing you can do in a moment you don't yet understand is to give yourself time to understand it. His stillness was active. He was reading the room, reading her, reading the statement, reading the relationship between all three with the full attention of someone whose professional skill was understanding what was actually happening beneath the surface of what appeared to be happening. What he found in the reading was this. The room was personal and inhabited and genuinely private. Her bearing was confident but not aggressive, deliberate but without the specific quality of threat. He knew what threat looked like in Keldrani posture, had learned it in the first weeks of the posting from the cultural briefing documents, and confirmed it across 4 months of direct observation, and this was not it. The statement was bold, extraordinary in fact, for a diplomatic context, but it had been delivered with the quality of someone who had chosen the words specifically for their impact rather than for their literal meaning. She was watching him process all of this. He understood, and was doing so with the patient attention of someone who had factored the processing time into the arrangement. "That's a significant opening," he said. "I intended it to be," she said. "Subtlety, in my experience, gets managed. I wanted to make it clear that this room is different from the other rooms." The locked door also made that clear. "The locked door is practical," she said. "This building has attendants who conduct security rounds at the 5th hour. I would prefer not to be interrupted." She moved to the room's sitting area, 2 chairs angled toward the viewport, a low table between them, a simple arrangement that communicated its purpose without requiring explanation. She sat in one chair with the ease of someone in their own space and looked at him with the quality of attention he recognized from the sessions. Full, precise, directed. "Sit down, Soren Cal." He sat. "I have been watching you for 4 months," she said. "In the sessions, in the corridor discussions, in the reception events and the formal meals, and the 14 different contexts in which our roles have placed us in the same room. I have formed conclusions." "I've been watching you for 4 months as well," he said. "It's the job." "Yes," she said, "but the job's watching produces a specific kind of knowledge. It produces knowledge of positions and patterns and the architecture of how a person argues. It does not produce," she paused, selecting. "It does not produce knowledge of the person." "No," he agreed, "it doesn't." "I need to know the person," she said. "Not for the negotiation. I have sufficient knowledge of your negotiating approach for the negotiation. I need to know the person because I have been trying to determine something about you for 4 months, and the official sessions have not resolved it. What are you trying to determine? She looked at him steadily. Whether your patience is strategic or genuine. He considered this. Why does the distinction matter? Because if it is strategic, she said, then I understand it and can account for it. Strategy is predictable once identified. But if it is genuine, if you are actually the way you appear to be in the sessions, patient and careful and genuinely interested in understanding rather than simply in winning, then you are something I have not encountered in 22 years of diplomatic work, and I need to understand what that is before I can know what to do with it. Soren looked at her. In the private chamber's warm light, without the formal session's institutional architecture around her, she had a different quality than the one he had been reading for 4 months. Not different in the way of a mask removed, the composed intelligence was still entirely present, still entirely her, but different in the way of something seen from a closer distance. More specific, more complete. The patience is genuine, he said. Not because it works, though it does. I'm constitutionally unable to move faster than my understanding. My understanding of the Keldrani position in this negotiation is still incomplete after 4 months, and I can't act as though it isn't. She looked at him for a moment. What part of it is still incomplete? The part where I understand what the authority actually needs from this framework, he said. Not what the official position states it needs. I understand that thoroughly. What the people who will live under this framework actually need, in the way that official positions sometimes don't fully capture. Rael was quiet for a moment. Her ears moved, the fractional adjustment of genuine engagement, the involuntary shift that her sessions training had not been applied to in this room, and which he found considerably more informative than 4 months of managed official presentations. That is a more precise formulation of what the sessions have not yet addressed, she said slowly, than anything that has appeared in the official record. The official sessions are not designed for that kind of precision, he said. They're designed for the negotiation of stated positions. The underlying need is a different conversation. Yes, she said, it is. A pause. That is why we are having it here. The conversation moved the way good conversations moved, not in a straight line, not toward a predetermined destination, but in the organic, exploratory way of two intelligent people who have given each other the room to actually think rather than to perform thinking. Rael talked about what she was carrying, not in the abstract terms of official position papers, but in the specific, interior terms of someone who had been doing this work for 22 years and understood its weight from the inside. She talked about what it meant to represent the authority in a negotiation of this scope, the specific loneliness of it, the way every relationship in her professional life was filtered through the question of role and institutional requirement, the way she moved through her own government's corridors as a function rather than a person, known thoroughly as the thing she did and barely at all as the person doing it. She talked about the Keldrani authorities' actual relationship with the cooperative framework they were negotiating, not the stated position, which was cautious and protective of sovereignty and institutionally appropriate, but the underlying reality, which was that the authority was aware that the next several decades would require exactly the kind of cross-civilization relationship that the framework was designed to establish, and that the caution in the official position was partly genuine strategic care, and partly the institutional defensiveness of a civilization that had been managing its own affairs for long enough to have made an identity of the managing. The official position is afraid, she said. Not the people in the room, me, personally. I am not afraid of the framework. But the institution has a reflexive defensive posture that the official position expresses, and it is not always the same thing as what the people carrying that position actually believe. I know, he said. I've been reading the gap between the stated position and the actual position for 4 months. It's why I've been patient. You can't negotiate with the gap. You have to wait for the conversation that closes it. She looked at him. You knew. I had a working theory, he said. I didn't know what was on the other side of the gap until now. And now I know that the institutional defensiveness is not the same as actual opposition, he said, which changes what the framework needs to do. It doesn't need to overcome resistance. It needs to give the institution a way to move that doesn't feel like concession. He paused. That's a solvable problem. It's a different problem than I was trying to solve. Rail was quiet for a long moment. Outside the viewport, Verath Damaz government district held its illuminated geometry against the dark, with the settled permanence of things that had been built to last. 22 years, she said. No one has said that to me in 22 years. Said what? That it is a solvable problem. She said it with the quality of someone tasting a thing they had been told did not exist. Every negotiation I have conducted has treated the institutional defensiveness as the fixed element, the thing to be worked around or overcome or accommodated, not as a variable, not as something whose nature, once understood, revealed a different problem underneath. It's easier to see from outside, he said. I don't carry the institution. I can see its shape because I'm not inside it. And I cannot see the shape of my own institution because I am its instrument, she said. Yes, I know this. I have known this for years. It is one of the specific limitations of the position I hold. She looked at him. What does the human accords institution look like from the inside? What is the shape of its defensiveness? He considered this with the honesty the question deserved, and the honesty the room required, which was more than the official sessions had ever asked for. Smaller than it wants to appear, he said. The Accord is not a powerful civilization in the way the authority is powerful. It is a young one, and young civilizations carry the specific anxiety of things that are still becoming what they are going to be. The official position projects confidence because the anxiety would be read as weakness. But the underlying reality is that the Accord needs this framework more than the stated position acknowledges, and the aggressive confidence of the official stance is partly a management of that need. Rail absorbed this. You are telling me things that the official record would consider significant vulnerabilities. Yes, he said. You told me things the official record would consider the same. That's the nature of this room. She looked at him for a long moment. The lamp's warm light caught her face at the angle of the chair, and he could see in it the thing that 4 months of sessions had shown him at a distance, and that this room was showing him close. The specific quality of a person of exceptional intelligence who had been operating in a context that did not always give that intelligence what it needed, and who was, in this room at this hour, finding the conversation it had been waiting for. The negotiation that continues tomorrow, she said, will be conducted under the same official constraints. The positions will be what the positions are. The institutional weights will be what they are. Yes, he said, but we will both know what we know now, she said, which changes what is possible even if it does not change what is official. That's what this was for, he said. I understand that now. She was quiet then. I want to ask you something that is not about the negotiation. All right. What do you want? She said. Not the outcome of the framework, not professionally. You, as a person who has been in these rooms for 4 months carrying the weight of what you carry. What do you want from this work, underneath the official purpose? He looked at the viewport. At Verath Damaz illuminated government district, the stone that had been built for permanence, the systems that had been governing themselves for centuries. To make something that lasts, he said. Not a document. Documents are the record of something, not the thing itself. To make an actual relationship between the accord and the authority. The kind that doesn't require constant maintenance because it's built on genuine understanding rather than managed terms. He paused. Most diplomatic frameworks I've worked on have been managed terms. Agreements between parties who understand each other well enough to make the agreement work, but not well enough to not need the agreement. I want to build something where the relationship is strong enough that the framework is almost redundant. Rael looked at him for a long moment. In 22 years, she said, no one who has sat across a table from me has said that either. Said what? That the relationship matters more than the framework. She said it with the quality of someone who had believed this for 22 years and had been operating in a professional context that did not have room for the belief and was now, in this private chamber at this late hour, finding it stated back at her by someone from another civilization. I have believed this for my entire career. I have not been able to act on it because the institution does not operate that way. It operates on terms. I know, he said, most institutions do. The terms are how you make something official and recordable and transferable. The relationship is what makes the terms worth keeping. She was quiet for a long time. The lamp burned steadily. Outside, Vereth Dama held its permanent stone against the dark. I owe you an explanation, she said finally, for what I said when you entered. I think I understand it, he said. Tell me what you understand, she said. I want to know if I succeeded. He looked at her. You needed a room without cameras, he said. Without the watching. You've been trying to determine something about me for 4 months in a context that wasn't designed to let you determine it, and you ran out of patience with the official context limitations. You claimed the night in the boldest possible way because you've learned that subtle claims get managed into something smaller, and this conversation was too important to be managed. He paused. The locked door was practical. The statement was an announcement of what kind of space this was. That whatever happened here was outside the official record and could therefore be honest. She looked at him. Yes, she said, that is exactly what it was. Then it worked, he said. The 5th hour was approaching when the conversation finally reached its natural end. Not because it had exhausted itself, but because it had arrived at the place it had been building toward. The full understanding of both sides, the knowledge of the person beneath the role, the specific clarity that an honest conversation produces when it is given the room to actually be won. At the door, unlocked now, the night ending, both of them returning to the official world where their roles were fixed and their words were watched, Rael looked at him with the quality of someone who has given something and received something and is taking the measure of the exchange. The negotiation continues tomorrow at the 2nd hour, she said. Yes. It will look the same as it has looked, she said. The positions will be the same. The official architecture will be the same. Yes, he said, but will be different inside it. She considered this. Yes, she said, we will. A pause. I told you tonight that you belong to me. I return you now. The corner of her mouth moved, not the managed expression of official occasions, but the genuine, fractional thing that lived underneath the management. With the acknowledgement that the evening was not entirely a claim. It was also a gift. To both of us, he said. Yes, she said, to both of us. He walked out into the corridor, which was quiet and empty at the 5th hour, holding the settled quality of a building where the official day had not yet resumed. He walked back toward the human delegation's wing with the specific quality of feeling that came from a conversation that had rearranged something. Not dramatically, not in any way that would be visible from outside, but in the way that things rearranged when they were set more correctly than they had been before. Behind him, the chamber door closed. Tomorrow the sessions would resume at the 2nd hour. The official positions would be what they were. The institutional architecture would hold its form. 2 civilizations would continue the careful, consequential work of building a framework that would shape the next several decades. But underneath the official architecture, 2 people who had spent 4 months reading each other across the formal distance of official contexts would now be reading each other from a closer distance, with the knowledge of what the other person actually was beneath the role.